Are you ready to unlock the secrets of brand innovation? Here you'll discover unexpected ways to make your brand soar in value. Get ready for inspiring stories, actionable tips, and insights you'll need to build your brand and learn an entirely new way to fly. This is the Hummingbird Effect. And now your host, Wendy Coulter.
Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Coulter, and I help CEOs unlock the hidden power of their brands. For years, business leaders have focused on marketing tactics, but what really matters is building a strong brand. Have you experienced a hummingbird effect? Like the flower and the hummingbird co-evolved, small innovations in branding can lead to, surprisingly, big results in other areas of a business. That might include increased valuation, a change in corporate culture, or an operational breakthrough. Today I have Hanna Jernigan on with me. She's Hummingbird's marketing strategist. How are you doing today, Hanna?
I'm doing wonderful, Wendy. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been quite a day so far. I've been out on spring break for a week, and evidently my brain's not working extraordinarily well this morning, so I'm so glad you're here to keep me straight today.
Well, it's a rainy Monday morning, so we can only expect so much.
Except it's the afternoon.
Oh, wait. It's the afternoon.
Oh, man.
All right.
Okay, Joe, you're going to work some magic today.
Just put it in as is. They need to see the real us.
That's true. Makes it fun.
So today we're diving deep into the world of brand building, and we're welcoming Christine Bartlett to the show. Christine is the former Chief Marketing Officer at SonicWall, and she's known as a visionary in the cybersecurity marketing space, having spent many years working in global marketing at Cisco. So that's very, very impressive. And we're going to talk to her today about how seemingly small innovations in branding or marketing can lead to big results in other areas. Hanna, my research extraordinaire, do you have any fun facts about Christine to share with us today?
And research extraordinaire is just glorified stalker. So Christine recently completed a generative AI business sprint from MIT Sloan School of Management. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So you've been testing and using the tools and just kind of figuring out how you can get content ideation, creation, different things that will come from it. And then I also saw that your kids were recently invited into the cockpit of your flight, which sounds awesome.
It's true. Yeah, I was really impressed by the pilot's ability to take my 4-year-old son and just welcome him into the cockpit. And this was a Southwest flight. So for those of you who fly Southwest, you know, we don't get seat numbers. And I have 2 kids with me, and my husband wasn't traveling. And I'm like, we got to get seats. So I'm like, I need to leave him here with you. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's fine. And he must have been up there for about 5 minutes with the pilots.
That's
Wow.
So
That's
hopefully he'll
amazing.
be one day.
Well, Christine, we're going to talk to you today about how seemingly small innovations can make a big difference and create a hummingbird effect. But as we get started, why don't you introduce yourself and give us some of your amazing background?
Okay. No, and thank you for having me. It's super exciting to be here. I've listened to some of your podcasts and happy to contribute to the listeners out there. So a little bit about me. Yes, I had extensive background at Cisco, and I'll maybe go back a little bit further, not too far into like my internship years, but I graduated from Syracuse University in public relations. So didn't actually think or know I was always going to end up in marketing, which is interesting, and we'll probably get through some of that. And after graduating, I actually went into nonprofit, and I did a year in AmeriCorps and worked in earlyhood child education. And also did a lot of fundraising, which gets into marketing, my marketing experience, because to fundraise is a lot like selling, but you're having to sell for compassion and something that, you know, somebody's not going to necessarily see the end product or result of in the nonprofit world. So that was really tough in my 20s, but it I earned a lot of grit and learned a lot along the way through that.
I was about to say, you have to be able to market well to do fundraising. I do a lot of fundraising for organizations I'm a part of, and it's a different world to do that kind of fundraising.
Yes, it is.
It requires a lot of ingenuity along the way.
Yes. Yeah. And then, I had some student loans, so I couldn't work in nonprofit forever. So to speed it up, I ended up consulting and went to the Bay Area and the kind of the San Francisco area and worked at HP, Chevron, PG&E, and then got hired on as a consultant at Cisco working on an acquisition. And then I was the only glutton for punishment person that would do it, I guess, do the work. And so the manager had asked me, why don't you just apply full time? And I kind of looked at her pretty crazy because I was like, I don't have 10 plus years of experience. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not the person for this job. I'm just kind of in here as a consultant and helping you guys, bridge it until you find a full-time person. And needless to say, she kept pressuring me to just apply and go for it. So I did. And I went through 11 rounds of interviews. It was probably the most excruciating interview process. And I got in and I did the work for about a year, integration work with big M&A, mergers and acquisitions. We had acquired a company called Tandberg out of Norway. It was huge. It was, they brought in telepresence, which is the ability to do video. And now we're all on WebEx or Zoom, right. But they had a really kind of high class video offering, right? And this was back in 2010, 2011. So they were in advance of the technology from where it is today. Yeah. Anyways, it was a very, just multicultural acquisition on top of just different cultural norms. Like, even though being at Cisco, it's funny to say this, like that team was always on video and Cisco was not on video. We were on WebEx, but we weren't actually turning our cameras on. So there was just nuances and things like that we had to work through. Anyways, fast forward a little bit further, I ended up working on the deal team on the front end of acquisition, so more on the corporate development side, where you're under non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and you get to understand, why are we acquiring this company? And I would put together all the messaging, not necessarily branding, but the positioning and working with the PR team. I had to work with finance, legal, get everybody on board. Cisco's an incredibly large company, so there's multiple stakeholders. Anyways, worked on, close to over 50 acquisitions. Wow. And we closed a ton. I have all these loose sites in my office of all the ones that we got to close. And I've got some fun stories about those too. And then, kind of grew up in marketing because I left that role in mergers and acquisitions when we acquired a cybersecurity company. It was our first cybersecurity company called SourceFire. And that marketing team got to know me and they were like, wow, you did all the messaging and community. You already know us, our products, everything that we do. You got to come work for us. Like, you got to come to our side and help us learn Cisco. So then, that was kind of my trade-off. I said, okay, well, I guess I'll step away from more of the PR and really learn true marketing, digital marketing, branding, all the operational components of demand gen marketing and things like that. So from that point on, I grew up in both marketing and cybersecurity at the same time and was in that role year over year. We were always acquiring another company, which is something I got to a little preview into because I was on the corporate development team, which was nice. So I kind of took a bet that cybersecurity was going to be a good industry to be a part of. And luckily that did work out for me. And then I ended up with a team of 3. And then by the time right before I left to go to SonicWall, I had a team of over 60. Wow. Just through all the acquisitions and different facets of marketing. I was leading integrated marketing. And then thought, okay, now it's my time to step out and kind of grow up outside of Cisco, and took my first CMO job at SonicWall.
But goodness, we talk about post-close integration. You did that over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Oh, come on.
That's a very hard job.
That just worked everywhere. Come on now.
We were building the process. We were like
Right.
driving the plane and flying, attaching wings on the side to keep us in the air.
Wow. Okay. Well, so I want to jump into Hummingbird Effect because I think you've got tons of stories you could share. So talk to us about a specific instance that you can remember where seemingly small change in the marketing made a big impact.
Yeah. So one comes to mind. I like to tell this story, and I don't know if it's necessarily marketing, but you mentioned like the cultural aspect of marketing is really important in knowing who your audience is, knowing who your customers are. And I would even say that extends into your employees.
Absolutely.
And so one of the acquisitions I got the privilege to work on was when Cisco acquired Meraki. And it was just over $1 billion acquisition. Meraki's employee count was over about 300. And so when we do big, that's a pretty big acquisition back then. Now $1 billion is probably not as big of a deal, I feel like. But back in, was it like 2012, I want to say, 2013, I got the privilege of, with the deal team manager, to prep John Chambers, who was the CEO at Cisco at the time. And so one of the big things that we found out and what the founders cared about was that, hey, we're a laid back team. This is our typical startup, jeans, hoodies, right? Like, you can't have your CEO come up on stage and address our employees and be like, yay, you're part of Cisco, and be in a suit. Like, please don't do that, And I love John Chambers. I've learned a lot from his leadership. And he is old school, and he dresses to the nines. He's very professional, very people friendly. But we got him to wear jeans that day and a polo, and we didn't tell him he had to wear the hoodie. But somebody gave him a hoodie. I think it was one of the founders, and he put it on, and everybody gave a round of applause. And I just think like that ability to just be part of the experience of either, I don't want to say you're trying to sell that, but, you want to get in touch with what is important to people. And whether you're selling a product, at the end of the day, it's still a feeling, it's an emotion that somebody's going to connect with. And like, it connected with me because I was like, wow, we got him to do it, And then ever since then, even at our, all employee meetings and things like that, he would wear jeans. And that typically wasn't like him. Now he still got jeans that look almost like dress pants, but that's okay. They were still jeans.
His trouser jeans, right?
Yeah. Right. But I just think, from a cultural standpoint, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to the employees. It's still one of the best acquisitions I think, Cisco ever made, just in terms of employees, consumer, customers. That was our break kind of into the mid-market space. But I just think that was something that really transcended across all facets of like who Cisco could evolve to be as a company, too, that, we were going to play in the startup space, and we believed, and we had the right leadership and the talent to attract that, to make that happen. And then we obviously went on to acquire other companies that were similar. Duo was a multi-factor authentication startup out of Michigan, similar, founders wore hoodies and things like that. And I think the ability to show that we could acquire a company like Meraki and be with them at their game and their level, when we go to pitch to another company and they see that, they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe Cisco is not a bad place to be acquired by, type of thing, which is great because, both people have to accept when a deal goes through.
Right. Well, so from my standpoint, the culture is such a big part of brand, and it's really become a bigger part of brand in recent years.
Yes.
And so how did you see that translate to other areas of the marketing that your team were doing as you were continuing to do other acquisitions? Like, how did that expand beyond the CEO?
Yeah, I think it expands into the employees feeling prideful, right? So they're up there on social media, they're talking about what a great place it is to work. And I think people mistaken like, oh, well, great place to work, that's just an HR thing.
Right.
It's not. It's part of marketing. It's part of your branding. It's part of who you are and how people think about you, how they embody, your brand. It's the overall experience. So I think that's a big thing. If you have employees, talking about how great it is, or what this leader did, type of thing. It's important because people see that, and then that's the impression that you leave on, a potential customer who might look more favorably to you down the road. You don't know, but you'd much rather have it be a positive influence than a negative influence, right? So I think that deep connection is what makes it so, powerful on the marketing side. And it's tough, like being in marketing all these years, these are those things where you always say, like, it's more of an art than a science, because it's hard to pinpoint like a specific data number or specific, like, oh, well, we, our brand impressions, grew, 200%, in this period. It's hard to quantify, like, what does that really mean? Okay. Right. Or if you can even sometimes you can't even really get that number. I think now you can, but sometimes I feel like those numbers are kind of inflated, depending on how you're looking at it, type of thing. So you got to be thoughtful about that too. I'm one of those marketing, I guess, professionals that, like, the data's really going to tell me something, otherwise you're just this fluff numbers,
So I have a question. When the CEO kind of flipped that switch at that meeting, did anything change for Cisco with culture at the same time? And can you talk about what that impact was to the larger community, not just the people he was talking to on stage that day, but beyond that, how did it affect marketing? How did it affect culture in a bigger way? I mean, you said he's known to wear jeans more often now and all of that, but how did it affect other things, sales, just everything?
I think, sales increased a decent amount because it opened up a whole new, kind of opportunity for us in the mid-market space. I think too, we sold primarily through the channel, through partners. So, other partners doing business with us, that instills confidence in them, and that we're diversifying our portfolio and making it easier for them to sell to their end customer, right? We're kind of, they're the middle, I hate to call it a middleman, middle woman, but, they're kind of that in between, and they're trying to add advice too. So it gives them something exciting to talk about, like, hey, Cisco's acquired this company. Now we have more products to offer you or more services to offer you, so I think that's a positive, aspect of it. And then I think the other thing too, that is maybe a little silly, but this was kind of in the early days of people wanting to bring their pets to work and things like that. So Meraki was very big on, hey, let's, we bring our pets to work, we have pet space and dog treats for them. And we have, the other thing they also had, which was another thing that a lot of startups did, was, the free snacks or free breakfast every morning. I don't know, since the way the economy's gone up and down, that's not so much the case anymore, but back in the 2010s, 2015s, there was a lot of that happening. And so I think a lot of the people felt like, hey, I don't want this to get taken away. And so Cisco said, like, no, we're going to embrace that. That's going to be part of our culture. Like, we're going to bring that in, and we're going to, allow departments to have whatever additional funding or things for people in communities, type of thing, and ways to, have folks come into the office and culminate, have conversation and that type of thing, which, and before where we're at today, like before COVID, Cisco was actually really good about being virtual and remote work. It didn't take COVID to make that happen for Cisco. So I think the interesting thing was, now having this direction of, hey, we're acquiring startups that have these other cultures. We're going to also grow up as a company and instill those values for the rest of our employees. Another thing I was just going to say is I think it really opened the doors for younger talent to come in, because I think Cisco was known as, it came out of the dot-com boom in the 1990s. And, I don't know that a lot of people nowadays maybe kind of know who John Chambers is. Some people do, but Cisco was known as the networking company. We were the plumbing. I hate to say that, because we're always like, don't say that as part of the marketing team. Because you don't want to be known as that. But I mean, it's just a quick, easy visual. We're like what's behind the wall, of a building or a business that's fully operating, and their internet's working, their data centers and their servers are working. And, we're kind of the inside job, that not a lot of people know what Cisco really does. So anyways, I think that helped kind of broaden our reach. And from a branding and just marketing, that ability to attract top talent or talent out of colleges is really important too, because that speaks to, what your company is bringing economically into the local cities and into the, environment that those those towns and cities operate in, which is really important.
I think it also can feed innovation to have that younger talent coming in all the time,
exactly.
right? So talk a little bit about how this decision to wear jeans on stage led to a more innovative outcome.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so, right? Because on top of that, we also had an investment arm, so that was another thing. We were investing in startups. And so being part of the local, I wasn't actually here in RTP at the time of those acquisitions, but we were, showing up at, innovation summits and stuff in San Francisco, and where founders were, sharing their business ideas and stuff like that. So we would not only come in and look to potentially acquire companies and products and their talent, but then we were also investing to keep a pulse on, okay, what's happening, what's going to be the latest technology, what's going to happen when type of thing, and really gives an opportunity to have a pulse on the market, and just where the talent is coming from too is really, really important. So being part of those kind of communities. I know in RTP, we had a university program. Cisco had a university program as well, where we were recruiting straight out of NC State, UNC, Duke, et cetera. And I think that's also a big contributor, right, to, hey, you graduated college, you meet the requirements, you get an internship, and then hopefully you get a job, and then maybe not right away guaranteed, like you'll probably get picked up somewhere else because you've had that experience at a big corporate company. I know when I graduated, it was in 2004, and the job market wasn't that great at the time, which is why I ended up going into nonprofit, because I was like, well, I gotta work somewhere. Right. And I mean, my heart was in it too, but I don't know that it was my initial first choice. I thought I was going to go work at like a PR agency or something like that, but it was just so hard to break into, and they didn't want to pay you anything to start.
Those were the days of the free internships.
Yes, they were.
Those were the days.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Do you want to stay ahead with insightful tips and industry-leading knowledge to build your business value through better branding? Sign up for the Birds of Wisdom email newsletter from Hummingbird Creative Group. The newsletter is packed with expert advice and the latest trends to help you elevate your brand. Visit hummingbird-creative.com today to subscribe. Don't miss out. Join the community, and let's soar together.
So you were on the acquisition team at Cisco. So I want to talk about, as you guys were looking at startups to buy or companies to invest in, did you see valuations, like when they were talking about what they were going to purchase these companies for, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That were just like, wow, this is really significant. And what do you, when you saw something like that happen, did marketing and brand have something to do with it? And do you remember a time when it did? Because that's really something I'm very interested in.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it does, because it all helps with positioning, right? Because what can you talk about that's more favorable to the deal happening in your favor, right? Because as the company looking to be acquired, yes, you want a high evaluation, but you also want it to be meaningful, and there's got to be some there. Like, what's the underlying value? Because a lot of what drives is that valuation is the total addressable market. How many competitors are there, right? How profitable are you? Is that profitability going to continue on at X number that we think it is, and it's going to compound and make us more money? Those are kind of the business transaction elements of it. But then I think there's the other thing that, and again, I didn't get to witness this at other countries or companies, so maybe I'm biased in the sense of, Cisco really took a 360 approach, right? Like, yes, it was the business and the product and the offering and the fit that was filling a void that we kind of had in our product portfolio. But then they really looked at the founders, the employees. Was this going to be worth? Because I think we've all seen those acquisitions that, like, go south real bad because, the deal team, the acquisition gets announced and then they lose all the talent or they lose a good portion of the talent, right? Type of thing. Because not everybody gets golden handcuffs, right? A lot of the middle management and even the early in career folks, or especially at startups, are who you want to keep and retain. So I think that, not to go back to the cultural element, but that cultural element does play a big role in, okay, are we going to really retain that and let these people know that we believe in them, that we are not just going to come in and slash jobs and look for efficiency. Like, this is a growth opportunity, right? That's the whole valuation. There should be a growth opportunity. But then, and there are some deals that don't flip that way. And unfortunately, I don't want to say can go south, but, the investment's not there on the people, or the investment's not made in the right negotiation areas that are more meaningful for that deal to take place. And then, you lose key leaders, and then you might lose some of that, equity or even IP. Like, a lot of this technology, like, you've got IP coming into play too that you don't want to lose, or you want to make sure that that's also signed in as part of the deal.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about culture, and Hanna and I talk about culture with our clients a lot. In today's competitive marketplace, generally the culture fit is everything.
It's so important.
It's everything. Yes. So from a brand standpoint, we're looking at core values, we're looking at the why. How do you see those changes impacting business metrics? What kind of positive business metrics changes? We talked a little bit about sales increase, but otherwise, did you see from the culture changes?
Yeah, well, I think, kind of goes without saying, right? You have happier employees. Usually the trajectory is a lot better, just in terms of overall performance. And so I think, people would always ask me, like, how did you get such a big team? And I'm like, I didn't ask for this, but it's like, you treat people how they want to be treated. And, people always say, for me, at least in my leadership anyways, was like, I'm honest. I'm a big believer in radical, candor, and also just transparency, I think, is really important. I think if part of what you value or your culture, allows for that, there's a level of respect. And then, people get to do their jobs. Most people want to wake up and have a good day. Like, nobody wants. And then on top of that, they want to do good at their jobs. They might need a little bit of help. They might need, assistance, that you don't want to knock them down, and they should feel free to, like, raise their hand, ask for help type of thing. And I think, at least Cisco, because, since I feel like I kind of grew up there in my own leadership, like, they gave us that experience to grow. And I felt like, because I got that, I passed that on to my leaders and the folks on my team. And I just think that was, now I'm trying to loop back to your original question, but I just think that is so important, in how people feel. Like, if they're not excited to be at work, or their manager's beating them down, you're not going to get any output out of them. Right. Like, it's just, I don't want to be micromanaged, type of thing. And I have been. So I guess I knew from that experience, like, when I started managing people, I was like, okay, Christine, don't do that to these people. They're not going to like you.
Were you ever able to leverage the culture piece into a campaign, or use data from employee satisfaction to help drive any initiatives that you were doing there?
I'm trying to think. I'm sure we were. Nothing like jumps to mind, but I think, I would say that we got to do a lot more kind of creative things or outlets. So we were also, in cybersecurity, and cybersecurity is a very persnickety audience, in the sense that you're dealing with ethical hackers, you're dealing with people that are constantly, like, questioning trust, and So trying to market to those individuals can be very challenging. But I would say that because of the culture that we had at Cisco, we were able to try, different things. We were able to do A/B testing and do different web forms, use photos. I mean, kind of basic tactical things. But I think because of people feeling inspired or empowered to come up with ideas, even though it was a harder kind of target audience that we were going after, it didn't mean we couldn't be creative, right? You just had to be thoughtful about, okay, who's your, ICP? Who are we going after? What are they interested in? And then really leveraging, those paths to kind of go down. There was one silly little marketing, I shouldn't call it silly because it was fun, but we did a lot of research to understand with our own threat researchers to understand like, okay, how could you talk about our cybersecurity products in like layman's terms, right? And make it fun. And we came up with a concept of, I think they were technically prairie dogs. They were either prairie dogs or meerkats. So we put together a whole video, and it wasn't even me, it was my team came up with the ideas. We did all the research with our threat researchers, and just put something fun together like that. I could not tell you the metrics. We did run it. We had it in email campaigns and things like that. I know it went well, but I think we were able to do things like that were kind of out of the box because we weren't trying to do the whole put a hoodie over and somebody like, black, dark room, like play the typical stereotypical hacker. Right. Like that's not what these guys want to see, But then I think there's also an element of education in cybersecurity that is lacking big time. So if we don't take the time to explain it and put it in like, a friendly, kind of explanation, like, okay, well, prairie dogs, they protect their home base and here's how they do it. And there's a lot of similarities in how they operate as an animal that's similar to how we have to operate in cybersecurity world, type of thing. So I think, we got to do, and, again, my team felt encouraged, they felt empowered. And I think that, and some of those folks have gone on to be managers themselves and been empowered. So I look at that as like, okay, well, then I did my job because, my job is not to tell people what to do. I want to lead them in a way that, they can, grow up in their professional careers and, take on new jobs as well and believe in themselves.
Do you feel like the hiring tactics kind of led to that outcome of it being a little bit more fun when you got the diverse pool, like bringing in the younger college students, bringing in different personalities that you might not have looked at before?
Correct. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. Because I think I had a couple, younger folks right out of college or not that, far off. And then I had a couple very senior folks too. So I had a good blend from that perspective. And I do think that made a big difference because you kind of got, when you all got in a room, you had a lot of difference of opinions, but in a good way. Nobody was like disagreeing, but you just had a lot of ideation flowing, which was really, necessary when you're trying to think about. And this was before ChatGPT, before you could just go do a prompt and, and ask, right? Like, what are my competitors doing, right? We could see some of that, but it was like, how are we going to be different? How are we going to show up? And what matters, most, and what things can we do? What levers can we pull to be a little bit different and pull that together? And I do think, the diversity of the team really does make an impact.
That's awesome.
So talk about like what you learned from that you took to SonicWall or that you see yourself kind of doing in the spaces you're in today.
Yeah.
That you learned from those experiences at Cisco.
Yeah. Gosh, so many. I would say, another, I guess one is, just the ability to kind of trust people that they want to do a good job. Right. And that, when you step into a new leadership role, like I did at SonicWall, I didn't know anybody. I mean, I did know one other leader because he was previously from Cisco. But outside of that, I had to learn all the marketing team. I had people, they left before I got there, which, is fine, all these things. So you have to quickly come in and assess, okay, who can I trust? Who really still wants to be here? Who's probably looking not to be here? Who doesn't want to be here? Right. And then you have to have those tough conversations because it's not about me personally. It's at the end of the day, I got hired to do a business, do a job for a business that is transacting. But I also am people first. So I want, them to have a good experience. So I think part of what I guess, a lot of what I did was in those first kind of 30, 60, 90 days was quickly evaluate my team, because I can't do all the work myself. I mean, SonicWall was close to 2,000 people, and I had a marketing team of close to 35. So I had to quickly assess, like, okay, who are, the rock stars, who are the people that I know that are going to rise to the occasion, because we're all going to have to chip in to figure out how to make this work. While I'm over here talking with the executive team, trying to build out, okay, capacity for where the holes, what am I going to fill type of thing, and build that in. And then also invest in the leadership team, because I still had a couple layers. Not everybody reported to me, I think is something that I had to learn at Cisco to survive, and not in a bad way, but like, if I was going to make it through the day, then I needed my other leaders to make it through the day and feel good about their choices and what they were doing, and know that they could come to me if they needed anything, type of thing. Yeah.
You feel like such a leader that leads with culture, like just naturally, like you don't see that as something that should be any different than the way you've experienced it.
I got lucky at Cisco.
She did. Yeah, she did, for sure. What advice would you give other businesses looking to identify and leverage similar opportunities?
Yeah. I guess going back to the culture thing, one thing I wanted to mention, because you kind of talked about, it's interesting, right? And I see this now, like startups or even the bigger companies, they have their mission, their values, and then they kind of have like their holding statement. And I can't tell you how many times I've read, and I'm like, you guys aren't even aligned on those like three things.
Yeah.
Like, how is it? Like, you can't, and then that's gotta transcend into, yes, ultimately how you sell or build relationships to sell products, or whatever it is that you're doing, right? Or you're solving, I shouldn't say sell a product, you're solving a need for somebody, right, that has this need. That's why businesses get created. And so I just find it interesting that it's like, and I had this experience at SonicWall too. Like they had before I had arrived, and again, nothing against them, but they had built out this whole ethos and cultural and thing. And I'm like, well, how did you do that without marketing? And so it just unfortunately kind of fell flat, because it's not like there was a demand that we had to use it. So it's fine. We let HR use it. But again, that seems so broken and piecemeal. So I guess my advice is, to CEOs or, marketers and HR, whoever's kind of coming up with like the cultural, mission, values, what we stand for, like that's all part of who you are as a company. And that bleeds into your marketing messages and your PR and everything. It should really be the backbone. But I feel like it just gets written down, put in a deck, they get sent to new employees, and then never looked at again. Or maybe at a few company meetings it gets flashed up, and then that's it. I don't know. So I would say that we got to do a better job as leaders of figuring out a way to really truly integrate that, and not make it feel like it's just something we checked the box and did, and we feel good about it, so we're just going to leave it off, on a shelf somewhere and kind of collect dust. I don't know if you agree or not.
The history of the marketing plan. Write it and set it on a shelf. Yes, absolutely. Especially for small business. Like some of the startups, it's like check it, mission, vision, values, value proposition. And we see it too, where the time just hasn't been spent to get everything in alignment. Right. Which is really, really important. And that kind of takes me to my next question, which is around like how fast things are moving today, right?
Yes,
like we're
so
in
fast.
this extremely fast environment, especially with AI, that it's just getting better and better and better and impacting all of us. But how do you think companies can stay nimble and adapt and make sure that they're doing what they need to do to move things forward and capitalize on potential hummingbird effects?
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, AI is not going away. So the one thing I would say is, like, if you haven't started tinkering around with it or exploring it, you gotta get in there. Like, it's like when Google came out for the first time, and people were like, what is that? You know, and that, you know, it's just another web browser. Nope. Like, look at where it is today. And I'd say the same thing would be for AI, right? Like the ability to embrace it. And I think the other thing that's made me so excited about it is it makes my life a lot easier if you think about what are the things that you want to achieve with it and still be true to your own values and who you are and what you bring to the table. Like, you know, AI is not going to replace leadership. It's not going to replace people's personalities, right? It's not going to replace how you show up to work. Like those are all still incredibly important things. If anything, now there's going to be probably more attention on those types of things because people are going to forget how to do those things. But I just think that, you know, with AI and just all the technology, and I guess I got to grow up at Cisco, so you got to see all the technology and through all the acquisitions, like it was just constant change of pace. So for me, like, this is like a no-brainer. I've lived in this world forever that when something new comes up, it's like, yeah, I want to know what that is. I want to know what's happening. I want to know what's going on type of thing. And so I just, I guess that would kind of be, you know, my advice or what I'm even doing is learning all the different types of AI tools when I can, or if there's an interesting webinar, I try to get on. I follow different you know, marketing AI practitioners that are kind of coming out now and things like that, who literally, like, I know a couple women that just, I don't know if they quit their job or they were looking for work and then they just became an expert in AI because there's not a lot of people not a lot of people have had the time to invest. And I've even, you know, I took that one class and I just feel like when I try to get some time in, I try to listen to other podcasts or hear about, okay, what are people using for prompts? What's the next tool that really is useful that I can just use hands-on for myself? And, you know, yes, the scary thing, you know, people are like, what'll be scary is when you have like, you know, a manager and then you have an agent that you've trained to do X, Y, and Z, but then that agent can train other agents beneath it, right? Like we will come to a day that is happening because there's so, even in marketing, there's so many tasks. Like, I think about when you build out a campaign, right?
Wow. Yeah.
You have the messaging framework, you have your ICP, like you have the bare minimum, like core documents, right? Your like holy grail of how you're going to get started. And then from there, you're just piecing out what's my email nurture journey? What's my, you know, social media plan? What's all my content? What's my one pager? What do the demos look like? Like that can all eventually, you know, it's not perfect yet, but a lot of that can get built out today. Just wild.
Well, and we just met AI expert.
Did you?
Who is training marketing people how to build out those cadences
kind of workflows and
workflows.
Right.
Yeah. So very interesting. Hannah, you got some thoughts?
Yeah,
here?
I do. I wrote down a lot.
You have a lot of
notes. I thought that this was a cool one because it was a full circle hummingbird effect, and I've even started a second circle, so I'm going to try to recap it as best as I can. But I think it really started when you personally took the time to understand Meraki. Is that how you say that one? And you didn't just look at the company and go, okay, they like whatever they like, the color blue. Right. And you went to your CEO and said, okay, you're going to need to wear blue today. You really like sat down and looked and saw something that was important to them, which was, you know, just being laid back in themselves. So you got that to happen. But then that kind of opened the eyes to everyone paying attention to the culture when you guys began to acquire. And it was both ways. It was they wanted a strong culture, which you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't have him dressed down. You would have never really known to do that. But it was a whole language you needed to speak to startups at the time. So I thought that was really cool because you probably weren't really thinking about that. But
not at the time. We were just like, how do we get this man in jeans?
How do they get there? But I mean, now you have a culture that people want to be a part of. And it's still a taboo thing of like, can I wear jeans to work?
I know.
I mean, yes. Like, it's okay for you to be comfortable in what you're doing. But then you embrace it still. You take it with you. You let people be the best that they can be by the way that you lead them. I mean, I think just it was all more successful all the way around. These companies got to be acquired. Cisco got more. So it was just a really cool story to hear. And I feel like I missed a bunch of it because I took so many notes I can't read over my notes. But it was really awesome to hear how just that little piece that you accepted and you saw and you implemented made such a big difference in Cisco and in what you were able to take on with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, yeah, it's interesting. Like, you don't spend a lot of time reflecting, right? And I think that was one. And yeah, for the record, it wasn't just me. It was like a big team.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we understood what was really important to, the founders and the culture. And I just think in order to share, your ability to say like, okay, I see you and we understand who you are, then there's got to be some trade-offs, I mean, Cisco was previously more antiquated or what felt very antiquated company. And here we are acquiring these like hip new startups. Like, then something culturally has to shift too, and how we show up. And so I do think that, yeah, I mean, it was a big success. People could bring their dog. I mean, literally, actually here in the RTP office, one of the gals that worked for me, she got to bring her dog to work. And that literally was because of the Meraki acquisition, because that changed the direction that we were headed in as a company.
And it's a big thing as well that Cisco listened and learned, because they are who you look to. And so the fact that you all were just willing to change speaks a lot to what you guys were able to accomplish. And I hope that that's a takeaway that people get from this is your way is not always the right way. Like, there are other ways to do it, and letting people be who they want to be and accepting them gets you the best people in the places they're supposed to be sitting.
1,000%. Yeah. And I've always had to learn, like, change is constant, and you can't beat yourself up over it. Like, just do what you can do and what you can contribute and realize your value. And then the rest, you just kind of have to let it flow to some degree.
This has been awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today that you haven't been able to?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back, and this is one of the things that I wrote down just really quickly is one of the things I did for my leaders at Cisco. So obviously, Cisco being a big company, we had this whole process where you had to do weekly check-ins, and we didn't always have it. This was probably in my last like 2 to 3 years as a leader. And it was actually helpful for me because people would have to go in, you check off like 5 things, and then, but it was tactical, and it was like just another thing that somebody had to do in their work day. They didn't want to have to do and tell you their manager what they were working on. But it was a great communication tool, and it only took like 3 minutes. So one of the things that I would do is, as an incentive to my leaders, is I would leave a quote, because I'm like, they don't need to hear me always go back and forth. They know they can call me. They can, so one of the things that one of my favorite quotes, which I'm sure you guys have heard this, but I'll just read it, is Maya Angelou's, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And like, that was one of my favorite quotes. And I had other ones from like Michael Jordan and other athletes, because I'm an former athlete myself, but it's just like that makes a difference. And like if you're going in to read your manager's feedback and you get like an inspirational quote, like my hope was that, okay, well, hopefully that leaves them feeling a little bit more inspired than just, hey, why didn't you do that?
I see you did 99.9%. Where's the other one?
Yeah. So I just, looking for fun ways, I guess, to engage with your employees or your customers. It doesn't, I mean, I could do that for customers too, right? Is people want to be seen and they want to feel good. And I just think that we forget about that, especially in the day of, AI and robots and all those fun things.
I think it's fabulous that today we have met a visionary in cybersecurity marketing, but a quintessential woman leader in STEM. That is just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Tell our listeners how to get in touch with you.
Oh, well, LinkedIn is probably the best way.
And it's Christine Bartlett.
Yes.
If you're looking for her on LinkedIn.
Yes.
We are so thankful for your time today. I think there's a ton of nuggets that our listeners will take away. And for all of you listening, thank you for giving us your time, and take what you've learned today from Christine and go find your Hummingbird Effect.
Thanks for listening to the Hummingbird Effect with Wendy Coulter. We hope you found this episode valuable. Please be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more or to work with Wendy and her team, go to hummingbird-creative.com.